After marrying an ex-convict, my daughter ignored my calls for 6 days, so I decided to enter her house in secret. When I arrived, I saw someone hiding in my grandson's room. When the police opened the door, what we found left us in shock. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Noel. I'm 64 years old and I never thought I'd be standing in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, staring at my phone like it held the answers to every question I'd ever had about my daughter's life. 6 days. That's how long it's been since I last heard Avalon's voice, and every hour that passes feels like a weight pressing down on my chest. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the backyard of Marcus's rental house 3 weeks ago. I'll admit, when Avalon first told me she was marrying a man who had spent 2 years in state prison, my stomach dropped. Not because I'm judgmental, but because I'm a father, and fathers worry. We worry about everything, especially when it comes to our daughters and their 8-year-old sons. Marcus seemed different from what I expected, though. Quiet, respectful, always called me sir, even when I told him Noel was fine. He'd done his time for burglary, been out for 18 months, working construction, and attending night classes to get his GED. Avalon looked happy when she talked about him, happier than she'd been since her divorce 3 years ago. But still, something in my gut wouldn't settle. The morning after their small ceremony, Avalon called me like she always did. She was excited, talking about how Marcus had surprised her with breakfast in bed, how gentle he was with Tyler, my grandson. Her voice had that lightness it used to have when she was younger, before life got complicated. I should have been relieved. "Dad, I know you're worried," she said during that last conversation, "but he's good to us, really good. Tyler already sees him as a father figure." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to push down that nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Maybe it was just the natural concern of a father watching his daughter start over with someone whose past included mistakes, serious enough to land him behind bars. "I just want you to be careful, sweetheart," I told her. "Take things slow, especially when it comes to Tyler." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Dad, we're already married. I think the slow part is over." That was Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, no call. Thursday, nothing. Friday came and went without even a text message. This isn't like Avalon. She's always been independent, sometimes stubborn as hell, but she's never been the type to just disappear, especially not when it comes to keeping in touch about Tyler. By Saturday, I was calling her phone every few hours. It went straight to voicemail each time. The message was still her voice, cheerful and professional from her job at the insurance office, but hearing it over and over again started to feel like torture. Sunday was worse. I drove by her house twice, but the curtains were drawn, and Marcus's beat-up pickup truck wasn't in the driveway. Monday morning, I called Tyler's school. I know I probably overstepped, but desperation makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. The secretary was polite but firm about not giving out information to anyone but parents or guardians. All she would tell me was that Tyler had been in school every day, picked up on time. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. If Tyler was going to school, someone was taking care of him. But why wasn't that someone calling me back? Why wasn't my daughter answering her phone? I've been a single father since Avalon's mother died when she was 12. We went through everything together. Her teenage years, her first heartbreak, her unplanned pregnancy at 22, her messy divorce. Through all of it, even when we disagreed, even when she was angry with me for giving unwanted advice, she never cut off contact completely. Never. The worst part is the not knowing. Is she okay? Is Tyler okay? Did something happen to them? Or did Marcus convince her that staying away from her old life was somehow better for their new marriage? I've heard about men who isolate their partners from family, though Marcus never seemed like that type. But then again, what do I really know about him except what he chose to show me? Tuesday morning, I woke up with a decision already made in my mind before I was fully conscious. I was going to drive over to their house, and if no one answered the door, I was going to use the spare key Avalon gave me months ago for emergencies. She'd pressed it into my hand when she first moved into that rental after her divorce, insisting I keep it just in case. "What if something happens to me and Tyler needs you?" she'd said. What if there's a fire and you need to get in to save important documents? At the time, it had seemed like her usual over-preparation for worst-case scenarios. Now, sitting in my car outside their house at 9 in the morning, that key felt like the most important thing in my pocket. The house looked normal from the outside. Small, single-story, painted white with blue trim. The kind of place a young family might rent while saving up for something better. Marcus's truck still wasn't there, but that could mean he was at work. Construction crews start early. I knocked on the front door, loud enough that anyone inside would hear. No answer. I walked around to the back, tried the kitchen door, knocked again. Still nothing. The blinds were closed on every window, making it impossible to see inside. Standing there in their small backyard, I realized I had two choices. I could go home, continue worrying, and hope that eventually Avalon would call. Or I could use that key and find out for myself whether my family was safe. The decision should have been harder than it was. I pulled out my phone and called Avalon's number one more time. Straight to voicemail, just like the past 6 days. My hands were shaking slightly as I ended the call and pulled the spare key from my pocket. Whatever I was about to find inside that house, I knew it would change everything. The key turned easier than I expected, and suddenly I was standing in my daughter's kitchen, feeling like an intruder in a place where I should have been welcome. The house was quiet, but not the comfortable quiet of a home at rest. This was the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, the kind that suggests secrets are being kept. I called out softly, "Avalon, it's Dad, are you here?" Nothing. Not even the sound of a television or radio playing somewhere in the house. Just my own breathing and the hum of the refrigerator. The kitchen was spotless, which struck me as odd. Avalon had always been neat, but this was different. It was the kind of clean that suggested either no one had been cooking, or someone had been very careful about cleaning up every trace of their presence. The dish towel by the sink was folded perfectly, not draped casually like you'd expect from daily use. I opened the refrigerator partly to check if they'd been eating, partly to give my nervous hands something to do. What I found inside made me step back and blink several times. The shelves were stocked with expensive groceries, organic fruits and vegetables, imported cheeses, craft beer brands I'd seen in upscale stores but never bought myself. A gallon of organic milk that cost $5.69, according to the price tag still stuck to the side. Prime steaks wrapped in butcher paper with a label from Morton's Fine Meats, the kind of place where a single steak costs $30 or more. This didn't make sense. Marcus worked construction when he could get it, probably making $15 an hour on a good day. Avalon's insurance job paid decent money, but not the kind that would support shopping at places like Morton's. Where was all this expensive food coming from? I moved through the living room, my footsteps muffled by a thick area rug that definitely hadn't been there the last time I visited. The furniture was the same, Avalon's modest couch and coffee table, but there were new additions. A large flat-screen television mounted on the wall, probably 60 inches, still had the Best Buy sticker partially peeled off, showing a price of $1,299. Gaming systems I didn't recognize sat beneath it, along with what looked like a sound system that could fill a much larger room. On the coffee table was a stack of mail, mostly addressed to Avalon. But I noticed several pieces addressed to Marcus Williams. The return addresses caught my attention. Law offices, financial institutions, companies I didn't recognize. One envelope, already opened, had letterhead from something called Heritage Financial Services. I shouldn't have looked, but desperation overrides manners sometimes. It was a statement showing a bank account balance that made my breath catch. $247,612. Under Marcus Williams's name. My hands were trembling as I set the paper back down exactly where I'd found it. Marcus Williams, the ex-convict who'd been working construction jobs for 18 months, had nearly $250,000 in the bank. Either he was involved in something illegal again, or there was a very big piece of this puzzle that nobody had shared with me. I walked down the short hallway toward the bedrooms, my heart pounding harder with each step. Avalon's bedroom door was closed, but Tyler's was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently, expecting to see his usual organized chaos of books, toys, and school clothes. Instead, I found a room that looked like it belonged in a furniture showroom. A new bed with a headboard that matched a complete bedroom set, probably worth several $1,000s. Shelves lined with books, not the worn paperbacks from the library that Tyler usually had, but hardcover books that looked like they'd never been opened. A desk with a computer setup that was better than anything I had in my own home. But Tyler wasn't there, which made sense since it was a school day. What didn't make sense was finding a pair of men's shoes tucked neatly under the desk. Expensive leather shoes, the kind you'd wear to a business meeting, not construction boots or sneakers. They were too small to be Marcus's, at least based on the work boots I'd seen him wear to the wedding. That's when I heard it. A soft sound coming from Tyler's closet, like someone shifting their weight or trying to get comfortable in a small space. My entire body went rigid. Someone was in that closet and they were trying very hard to be quiet about it. I stood perfectly still for what felt like several minutes, but was probably only 30 seconds, listening. There it was again, definitely the sound of someone breathing, maybe even whispering very quietly. Whoever was in there knew I was in the room and was hoping I'd go away without investigating. My mind raced through possibilities. Was it Marcus? Had he been hiding from me this whole time? Was Avalon in there with him for reasons I couldn't understand? Was it someone who had no business being in my grandson's bedroom? I approached the closet door slowly, my heart hammering so loud I was sure whoever was inside could hear it. The door wasn't completely closed, just pulled most of the way shut. Through the gap, I could see movement, someone definitely trying to stay hidden in the back corner behind Tyler's hanging clothes. "I know you're in there," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm Tyler's grandfather, and I just want to make sure everyone's okay." The movement stopped completely, like whoever was inside was holding their breath. Then, very quietly, I heard a man's voice whisper, "Please don't call the police yet. Let me explain." The voice wasn't Marcus's. It was older, more refined, with the kind of accent that suggested education and money. Whoever was hiding in my grandson's closet wasn't supposed to be there, but he didn't sound dangerous. He sounded scared. "Come out of there," I said, taking a step back to give him room. Slowly. "See ya." The closet door opened wider, and I found myself face to face with a man who was probably close to my own age, maybe 70, well-dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than my entire outfit. His hair was silver and neatly styled, his face clean-shaven, and despite the bizarre circumstances, he carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to respect and authority. He looked at me with tired blue eyes and said, "You must be Noel. Avalon's told me so much about you. I'm sorry we're meeting like this, but I think it's time you knew the truth about who Marcus really is." Standing in Tyler's bedroom, staring at this well-dressed stranger who had just emerged from my grandson's closet, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. Nothing about this situation made sense. Who was this man? Why was he hiding? And what truth about Marcus was so important that it required this level of secrecy? "I think you'd better sit down," the man said, gesturing toward Tyler's desk chair. His voice was calm, authoritative, but I could see his hands shaking slightly. "What I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to believe." I remained standing, my arms crossed. "Try me, and start with who you are and why you're hiding in my grandson's closet." He took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders like a man preparing to confess something he'd kept buried for years. "My name is William Charles Hartwell III. I'm Marcus's father." The words hit me like a physical blow. Marcus's father? Marcus had told us his parents were dead, killed in a car accident when he was 19. It was part of his story, part of what had led him down the wrong path that eventually landed him in prison. "That's impossible," I said. Though even as I spoke, I could see similarities in their faces now that I was looking for them. The same strong jawline, the same deep-set eyes. Marcus said his parents died years ago. William's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so full of pain. "To the world, I did die. 15 years ago, William Hartwell died in a boating accident off the coast of Florida. What they found was my yacht, burned and sinking, with enough blood evidence to convince everyone I was dead. I sank into Tyler's chair after all. You faked your own death? I had to. He began pacing the small room, his expensive shoes silent on Tyler's new carpet. I was facing federal charges for tax evasion, securities fraud, money laundering. The government was going to seize everything, and I do mean everything. My company, my homes, my bank accounts, my family's trust fund. 50 years of building wealth. Gone. My mind was reeling. So you just disappeared and let everyone think you were dead, including your son? William stopped pacing and looked at me with eyes full of regret. Marcus was already an adult, already making his own mistakes. I thought it would be easier for him if he didn't have to carry the burden of my crimes. If I was dead, he could start fresh, build his own life without my shadow hanging over him. Instead, he ended up in prison, I said, the pieces starting to fall into place. Yes, William's voice cracked. I've been watching from a distance all these years. I saw him struggle after my death. I saw him make bad choices, fall in with the wrong crowd. I saw him get arrested, convicted, sent away for 2 years, and I couldn't do anything to help him without exposing myself. I thought about the expensive food, the new television, the bank account with nearly $250,000. But you're helping him now. William nodded. When he got out of prison, when I saw him really trying to turn his life around, get his GED, find honest work, I started leaving money in accounts he could access. Cash payments for construction jobs that were higher than normal. I made sure he had resources to build a real life, without telling him where it was coming from. He thinks he's been getting lucky with work, finding generous contractors. He has no idea I've been supplementing his income. William sat heavily on Tyler's bed, looking every one of his 70 years. When he met Avalon, when I saw how happy she made him, how good he was with Tyler, I wanted to do more. I wanted to make sure they had everything they needed. The bedroom door opened, and both William and I turned toward it. Avalon stood in the doorway, her face pale but not surprised. She didn't look shocked to see her father-in-law emerging from her son's closet, which told me she already knew at least part of this story. "Dad," she said quietly, looking at me with apologetic eyes. "I can explain?" I stood up, feeling anger and confusion warring in my chest. "I hope so, because right now I feel like everyone in my family has been lying to me." Avalon stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "We weren't lying exactly. We were protecting you. And protecting William." "How long have you known?" I asked her. 3 weeks, since 2 days before the wedding." She sat down on the bed next to William, and I noticed how comfortable she seemed with him. "Marcus doesn't know. William told me because he wanted to make sure I understood that Marcus was a good man who'd had bad luck, not a career criminal." William spoke up. "I was worried that you and Avalon might think Marcus was still involved in illegal activities when you saw the money, the improvements to their life. I wanted at least one person in his new family to know the truth. But you didn't want Marcus to know his father was alive?" I was having trouble understanding this logic. "I'm dying," William said simply. "Pancreatic cancer, 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm lucky. I wanted to know my son was settled and happy before I died for real this time." The room fell silent except for the sound of the air conditioning clicking on. I looked at Avalon, who had tears in her eyes, then at William, who was staring at his hands folded in his lap. "There's more," Avalon said softly. "William has been staying here sometimes in Tyler's closet when he visits. Tyler thinks he's just a friend of Marcus's who stops by occasionally. William wanted to get to know his grandson without revealing who he really was." "Wow, Tyler is my only grandchild," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "I missed Marcus's entire childhood after I died. I missed seeing him become a man, watching him learn from his mistakes. I didn't want to miss knowing Tyler, too." I sat back down, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. So Marcus has no idea his father is alive, is financially supporting his family, and is secretly spending time with his stepson? "We were going to tell him," Avalon said quickly. "William wants to reveal himself before he gets too sick. But we needed to figure out how to do it without destroying Marcus's sense of pride and independence. He's worked so hard to build this life honestly," William added. "I was afraid that if he knew I'd been helping financially, he'd feel like his accomplishments weren't real. I understood that concern. Marcus had shown genuine pride in providing for his new family, in being the kind of man Tyler could look up to. Learning that his success was partially built on secret help from a father he thought was dead would be devastating. But he deserves to know, I said. He deserves to know his father is alive and wants a relationship with him. I know. William stood up, smoothing down his shirt. That's why I'm here today. We were planning to tell him this evening when he gets home from work. Avalon thought it would be easier if you knew the truth first, so you could be here to support them both. Avalon reached over and took my hand. Dad, I'm sorry we kept this from you, but William made me promise not to tell anyone until Marcus knew. I've been carrying this secret for weeks, and it's been killing me. I squeezed her hand, finally understanding why she'd been so distant, why she hadn't been calling. She'd been protecting a secret that wasn't really hers to tell, caught between loyalty to her new husband and respect for his father's wishes. When Marcus comes home tonight, I said, looking at both of them, this family is going to change forever. For the better, I hope, William said quietly. Looking at this man who had sacrificed everything, including his relationship with his son, to protect his family from the consequences of his mistakes, I found myself hoping the same thing. The rest of the day passed in a strange haze of nervous energy and careful planning. William had left shortly after our conversation, saying he needed to prepare himself mentally for the evening ahead. Avalon and I sat in her living room, the expensive television muted, trying to figure out how to tell Marcus that his entire understanding of his family history was about to be turned upside down. I keep thinking about how he'll react, Avalon said, curled up in the corner of her couch with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He spent 15 years believing his father was dead, 15 years carrying the weight of thinking he'd disappointed his parents so badly that they died before he could make things right. I'd been thinking about the same thing. During the few conversations I'd had with Marcus, I'd seen the pain in his eyes when he talked about his parents. He carried guilt that wasn't his to carry, believing that his teenage rebellion and early adult mistakes had somehow contributed to their deaths in that car accident that never happened. He's going to be angry, I said, not just at William, but at you for keeping the secret. Avalon nodded, her eyes filling with tears she'd been holding back all day. I know, but what was I supposed to do? William trusted me with this information, and he's dying. He just wanted to know his son was happy and settled before he revealed himself. Tyler came home from school at 3:30, dropped off by the mother of one of his friends. He bounded into the house with his usual 8-year-old energy, talking about a science project and asking if he could have friends over for a sleepover on Friday. Watching him, so innocent and unaware that his family was about to expand in the most unexpected way, made my chest tight with emotion. Is Mr. William coming over today? Tyler asked as he rummaged through the refrigerator for a snack. He said he might teach me how to play chess. Avalon and I exchanged a look. Tyler had been spending time with his secret grandfather for weeks, completely unaware of their relationship. To him, William was just Marcus's friend who visited occasionally and took an unusual interest in his homework and hobbies. He might stop by later, Avalon said carefully, after Marcus gets home from work. Cool. He's really good at helping with math problems. Way better than Marcus. Tyler grabbed an apple and headed toward his room. Marcus is good at building stuff, but Mr. William is smart about school things. After Tyler disappeared into his bedroom, Avalon looked at me with fresh tears. That's his grandfather, Dad. Tyler's been bonding with his grandfather for weeks, and he doesn't even know it. What if Marcus is so angry about the deception that he cuts William out completely? Tyler will lose someone who's become important to him. I didn't have an answer for that. The situation was complicated beyond anything I'd experienced as a parent or grandparent. Every choice seemed to carry the potential for heartbreak. Marcus came home at 5:45, looking tired but satisfied with his day. He kissed Avalon hello, asked Tyler about school, and nodded politely to me when he noticed I was still there. Hope you don't mind me staying for dinner, I said. Avalon invited me. Of course not, sir. You're always welcome here. Marcus went to wash up, calling from the bathroom. Is William coming by tonight? Tyler mentioned something about a chess lesson. Avalon's face went pale. Yes, he should be here soon. When Marcus came back to the living room, he seemed to notice the tension in the air for the first time. He looked at Avalon, then at me, his expression shifting from casual friendliness to concern. Is everything okay? You both look like someone died. The irony of his words hung in the air like a physical presence. Avalon stood up abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. Marcus, we need to talk. Before William gets here, there's something you need to know. About William? Marcus sat down slowly, his work-roughened hands folded in his lap. What about him? Avalon looked at me helplessly, and I realized she couldn't do this alone. I stood up and moved to stand beside her, putting a supportive hand on her shoulder. Son, I said, using a term of address I'd never used with him before. What we're about to tell you is going to be hard to hear, but it comes from a place of love, even if it doesn't feel that way at first. Marcus's jaw tightened. Just tell me. Avalon took a shaky breath. William isn't just your friend, he's your father. The words fell into the room like stones dropping into still water, sending ripples of shock through the air. Marcus blinked several times, as if he was having trouble processing what he'd heard. What do you mean? He's my father. My father is dead. My parents died in a car crash 15 years ago. No, Avalon said gently. Your father faked his death to avoid federal prosecution. He's been alive this whole time, and he's been watching over you from a distance. Marcus stood up so quickly his chair nearly tipped over. That's impossible. I went to their funeral. I saw their bodies. You saw what he needed you to see, I said quietly. William will explain everything when he gets here, but the important thing is that he never stopped loving you. He never stopped wanting to be part of your life. The color drained from Marcus's face. He walked to the window, staring out at the street as if he could somehow see his entire past from a different angle. When he turned back to us, his expression was a mixture of confusion, hurt, and anger. How long have you known? He asked Avalon. 3 weeks, since right before our wedding. And you didn't tell me? His voice was rising now, and I could hear Tyler moving around in his bedroom, probably wondering why the adults were talking so loudly. He asked me not to. He wanted to tell you himself, but he needed time to figure out how. Time? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. He's had 15 years to figure out how. Instead, he let me think I was an orphan. He let me believe that my parents died, thinking I was a failure. Avalon stepped toward him, tears streaming down her face. Marcus, please try to understand. He was protecting you from his legal troubles. He thought it would be easier for you if you could start fresh without carrying the burden of his crimes. So instead, I carried the burden of thinking I'd killed them with my disappointment. Marcus's voice cracked. Do you have any idea what it's like to believe that your parents died before you could make them proud? That you never got the chance to show them you could turn your life around? Before anyone could answer, there was a soft knock at the front door. We all froze, knowing that William had arrived for the conversation that would either heal a family or destroy it completely. Marcus looked at the door, then at Avalon, then at me. I don't know if I can do this. You can, I said, surprised by the conviction in my own voice. Whatever happened in the past, that man loves you. And you have a son who needs to see how adults handle difficult truths with grace. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and walked to the door. When he opened it, William stood on the other side, no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be anyone other than who he really was. Father and son looked at each other for a long moment, 15 years of separation, and secrets hanging between them like a chasm that might or might not be possible to bridge. The silence stretched between Marcus and William like a taut wire ready to snap. They stood in the doorway, father and son, studying each other's faces as if looking for proof that this moment was real. William had aged since Marcus last saw him 15 years ago, his hair completely silver now, lines etched deep around his eyes. But there was no mistaking the resemblance, especially now that I knew what to look for. "Hello, son," William said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus didn't respond immediately. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, and I could see him struggling with emotions that were too big and complicated to process all at once. Finally, he stepped back from the doorway. "Come in," he said, his voice hollow. "I guess we need to talk." William entered slowly, as if he was afraid any sudden movement might cause Marcus to change his mind. Avalon retreated to the kitchen, giving them space but staying close enough to intervene if needed. I remained in the living room, feeling like an intruder, but knowing that Marcus might need support from someone who wasn't part of this deception. 15 years, Marcus said, not sitting down, not offering William a seat. 15 years I thought you were dead. I know, William's shoulders sagged. I know what I put you through, and I know there's no excuse that will make it right. Try anyway. Marcus's voice was sharp now, all the hurt and anger he'd been carrying finally finding a target. Try to explain to me why you let your son believe he was an orphan, why you let me think I'd never get the chance to make you proud. William sat down heavily on the couch, looking every one of his 70 years. The federal investigation was closing in. They had evidence of tax evasion going back 20 years, securities fraud, money laundering through offshore accounts. I was looking at 30 years in federal prison and the seizure of every asset I'd ever accumulated. So, you ran. I protected what I could. William met Marcus's eyes. The family trust, the legitimate investments, the properties that weren't directly tied to the illegal activities. If I had died, those assets would have been protected for you. If I had gone to prison, the government would have taken everything. Marcus laughed bitterly. You think I cared about money? You think I needed your trust fund more than I needed my father? You were 24 years old, Marcus. You were already struggling, already making bad choices. I thought if you had financial security, if you could start over without the stigma of being the son of a convicted felon, you'd have a better chance at building a good life. Instead, I went to prison anyway. Marcus began pacing the small living room. Instead, I spent years thinking I was such a disappointment that my parents died before they could see me turn my life around. From the kitchen, I could hear Avalon quietly crying. In his bedroom, Tyler had turned on music, probably sensing the tension in the house and trying to drown it out. I watched you, William said quietly. I couldn't contact you directly, but I kept track of your life. When you were arrested, when you went to trial, when you were sentenced, I was there in the back of the courtroom. You couldn't see me, but I was there. Marcus stopped pacing. You were at my trial? Every day, I saw how you held yourself together, how you accepted responsibility for what you'd done. I saw the man you were becoming, even in the worst circumstances of your life. Shh. If you were so proud of me, why didn't you reveal yourself then? Why didn't you help me? William was quiet for a long moment, his hands folded in his lap. Because I was a coward. Because I was afraid that if you knew I was alive, you'd also know that I had the resources to help you, and chose not to. I was afraid you'd hate me for letting you face the consequences of your actions alone. So instead you let me hate myself, Marcus's voice cracked. You let me believe I was exactly the kind of person my parents always feared I'd become. I never feared that. William stood up, taking a tentative step toward his son. Even when you were getting into trouble as a teenager, even when you were arrested, I never stopped believing you were fundamentally good. I just didn't know how to reach you without destroying both our lives. The front door opened and Tyler walked in from wherever he'd been playing outside. He looked around at the tense faces of the adults and seemed to sense immediately that something important was happening. Hey, Mr. William, he said with his usual 8-year-old friendliness. Are you staying for dinner? Mom made spaghetti. The innocent question hung in the air, highlighting the complexity of the situation. Tyler had been building a relationship with his grandfather for weeks without knowing their true connection. Whatever happened next would affect him too. William looked at Tyler with such love and longing that I had to turn away. I hope so, Tyler, but that's up to Marcus. Tyler looked confused by the formality in William's voice, the tension he could sense but not understand. He moved closer to Marcus, instinctively seeking comfort from the man he saw as his father figure. Marcus? Is everything okay? Marcus looked down at Tyler, then at William, then at me. I could see him wrestling with the weight of the decision he had to make. He could hold on to his anger, nurse his hurt, and send William away. Or he could find a way to move forward, not just for himself, but for the boy who was looking up at him with complete trust. "Tyler," Marcus said carefully, "Mr. William has something he needs to tell you, something important about our family." William knelt down so he was at Tyler's eye level. His hands were shaking as he spoke. "Tyler, you know how sometimes families can be complicated?" Tyler nodded seriously. "Like how I have my real dad, who I don't see much, and Marcus, who takes care of me, and Grandpa Noel, who loves me." "Exactly like that," William's voice was gentle. "Well, it turns out that I'm part of your family too. I'm Marcus's father, which makes me your grandfather." Tyler blinked several times, processing this information with the remarkable adaptability of childhood. "But Marcus said his dad was dead." "I thought he was too," Marcus said quietly. "But sometimes adults make mistakes, even big ones. My father had to go away for a long time, and I didn't know he was still alive. But now he's back?" Tyler looked between Marcus and William hopefully. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the internal struggle playing out across his face. Finally, he looked at William and asked the question that would determine the future of their family. "Are you back, or are you just visiting before you disappear again?" William's eyes filled with tears. "I'm dying, Marcus. Pancreatic cancer, maybe 6 months left. I came back because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving this world without you knowing how proud I am of the man you've become, how much I've always loved you, how sorry I am for all the years we lost." The room fell completely silent except for the sound of Tyler's music still playing faintly from his bedroom. Marcus stared at his father, processing not just 15 years of believed abandonment, but now the knowledge that their time together would be limited. "You're dying," Marcus repeated slowly. "Yes, and I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, no right to expect anything from you. But if you'll let me, I'd like to spend whatever time I have left being your father, being Tyler's grandfather, being part of this family you've built." Marcus looked at Tyler, who was watching the conversation with wide, serious eyes. Then he looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that reminded me of my own moments of difficult decision-making as a father. "Tyler," Marcus said, "why don't you go wash up for dinner? I think we're going to have a guest tonight." Tyler's face broke into a grin. "Really? Mr. William is staying?" "Grandpa William," Marcus corrected quietly. "And yes, he's staying." "Boris." As Tyler ran off to wash his hands, Marcus turned to his father. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet. I may never be ready, but I'm willing to try to understand. And Tyler deserves to know his grandfather while he still can." William nodded, tears streaming down his face. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." Looking at them, I realized that sometimes the most profound moments of healing don't come with grand gestures or perfect words. Sometimes they come with simple acceptance, with the willingness to sit at the same table and share a meal, even when the wounds are still fresh and the future is uncertain. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the same living room where everything changed, but the house feels completely different now. It's warmer somehow, filled with the kind of easy comfort that comes when a family has learned to be honest with each other, even when the truth is complicated. William is in his chair by the window, the one we bought specifically for him after he moved into the guest room 3 months ago. His illness has progressed faster than the doctors initially predicted, but he's still with us, still part of our daily routine. Tyler sits on the floor beside him, working on a 1,000-piece puzzle of the solar system that William bought him for Christmas. Their heads are bent together in concentration, grandfather and grandson sharing the kind of quiet companionship I remember having with my own father. "Grandpa William," Tyler says without looking up from the puzzle, "when you were my age, did you know you wanted to be rich when you grew up?" William chuckles, the sound raspy but warm. "I didn't know I wanted to be rich exactly. I knew I wanted to be important. I wanted people to respect me." "Oh, do you think being rich made people respect you?" It's the kind of profound question only children ask without realizing how profound it is. William considers it seriously, as he always does when Tyler asks him something. "Some people respected my money," he says finally, "but the people whose respect really mattered, the people I loved most, I lost their respect by caring too much about being rich." Tyler nods as if this makes perfect sense to him. But you got it back, right? Marcus respects you now. From the kitchen, where Marcus and Avalon are preparing dinner together, I hear Marcus pause in whatever he's doing. The relationship between father and son has been a slow rebuild, full of difficult conversations and careful steps forward. But Tyler is right. Respect has returned, along with something deeper. I think so, William says quietly, but it took a long time, and I had to learn that respect isn't something you can buy or demand. You have to earn it by being the kind of person worth respecting. I've watched this process unfold over the past months, the gradual healing of a relationship that was broken by secrets and fear. It hasn't been easy. There have been arguments, moments when Marcus's anger flared up again, times when William's guilt seemed too heavy for him to carry. But they've worked through it with a kind of patience and persistence that real love requires. Marcus appears in the doorway, dish towel in his hands. Dinner's almost ready. Dad, do you need help getting to the table? The word dad still catches my attention every time Marcus uses it. For the first month after William's revelation, Marcus called him William or nothing at all. The transition to dad happened gradually, naturally, without fanfare or formal decision. One day I just noticed that's what he was saying, as if 15 years of separation had compressed into something manageable, something forgivable. I'm fine, William says, but he moves slowly as he gets up from his chair. The cancer has taken its toll, making him frailer than a man his age should be. But his eyes are bright when he looks at his family, and there's a peace in his expression that wasn't there 6 months ago. We gather around the dining room table, the same table where Marcus and Avalon first told me they were getting married, where so many important family conversations have taken place. Tyler chatters about his day at school, his upcoming science fair project, his plans for summer vacation. Normal 8-year-old concerns, beautifully ordinary. Grandpa William, Tyler says between bites of Avalon's homemade lasagna, will you be able to come to my science fair next month? William glances at Marcus, then at Avalon. We all know the answer, but nobody wants to say it directly to Tyler. The doctors have been clear that William has weeks, not months. I'm going to try my best, William says simply, but if I can't be there in person, I want you to know that I'll be thinking about you and I'll be very proud of you. Tyler accepts this with the matter-of-fact way children accept difficult truths when they're delivered with love and honesty. Okay, Marcus can take pictures for you. After dinner, Tyler goes to his room to work on homework, and the 4 adults linger at the table with coffee. These evening conversations have become precious to all of us, a time when we can talk about the complicated realities of our situation without pretending everything is simple. I've been thinking about what comes after, William says quietly, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug for warmth. After I'm gone, I mean. Avalon reaches over and covers one of his hands with hers. Over the months, she's developed the kind of easy affection with him that comes naturally to her generous heart. She's never made him feel like an intruder or a burden, despite the complexity he brought into their marriage. We don't have to talk about that tonight, she says gently. Yes, we do. William's voice is firm but kind. I need you all to know that the money, the trust fund, all of it goes to Marcus and Tyler. But more importantly, I need you to know that this family you've built together is the most important thing I've ever been part of. Marcus sets down his coffee cup and looks at his father. Dad, you don't need to worry about us. We'll be okay. I know you will, but I want you to remember that being okay isn't the same as being happy. Don't just survive, Marcus. Thrive. Build the kind of life that makes you proud, not because of money or success, but because of love. I find myself thinking about my own mortality, about the legacy I'll leave behind. Watching William navigate his final months with such grace and intentionality has made me reconsider what really matters. You know what I'm most grateful for? William continues, his eyes moving around the table to each of us. I'm grateful that I got to know Tyler. I'm grateful that I got to see the kind of man Marcus became and the kind of father he is. I'm grateful that Avalon welcomed me into this family even when she had every reason not to trust me. He pauses, looking directly at me. And I'm grateful that Noel showed up that day and found me hiding in the closet. If you hadn't forced the truth into the open, I might have kept hiding until it was too late. I nod, remembering that morning 6 months ago when I walked into my daughter's house, expecting to find answers to simple questions, and instead discovered a family secret that changed everything. Sometimes the best thing you can do as a father is refuse to let your children handle things alone, I say, even when they think they don't need help. Later that evening, after William has gone to bed and Tyler is asleep, Marcus and I sit on the front porch with beers, something that's become our routine when I stay for dinner. "How are you really doing with all this?" I ask him. Marcus is quiet for a long time, staring out at the street where Tyler will ride his bike tomorrow, where William will sit in his wheelchair watching if he's feeling well enough. "Some days I'm angry," he admits. Angry about the lost years, angry about the lies, angry that we're running out of time just when we're figuring out how to be father and son again. And other days? Other days I'm just grateful. Grateful that he came back, even if it's just for a little while. Grateful that Tyler gets to know his grandfather. Grateful that I got the chance to show him who I really am, not the screwed-up kid he left behind. De la. A police car drives slowly down the street, and both of us tense slightly out of old habit. Marcus spent 2 years in prison, and I spent decades worrying about my daughter and grandson. Some instincts die hard. "You know what's funny?" Marcus says. He was so worried about me finding out he'd been helping financially, worried it would make me feel like my accomplishments weren't real. But the money doesn't matter. What matters is that he cared enough to help, even when he couldn't tell me about it. "He loves you," I say simply. "He's always loved you." I know that now. I just wish it hadn't taken a terminal diagnosis for us to figure out how to talk to each other. 6 weeks later, William passes away quietly in his sleep on a Tuesday morning. Tyler finds him when he goes to wake him up for breakfast and handles the discovery with a maturity that breaks my heart and makes me proud at the same time. The funeral is small, just our family and a few of Marcus's co-workers who had gotten to know William over the past months. Tyler insists on speaking, standing at the podium in his best clothes, to tell everyone about his grandfather who taught him chess and helped with math homework, and always listened to his stories about school. Grandpa William told me that the most important thing in life isn't being rich or famous, Tyler says, reading from notes he wrote himself. The most important thing is being kind to your family and being proud of the person you choose to be. I'm proud that he was my grandfather. As we leave the cemetery, Marcus puts his arm around Tyler's shoulders, and I see William's legacy in that gesture. A family that was broken has been made whole, not perfect, but honest and loving and strong enough to weather whatever comes next. That evening, we're back in the living room that has seen so much change over the past year. Tyler is working on his homework at the coffee table. Marcus is reading a book William gave him about family history, and Avalon is planning a garden she wants to plant in William's memory. I look around at this family that almost lost each other, that found each other again through secrets and revelations and the hard work of forgiveness. Sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in the most complicated packages. Sometimes the people we think we've lost forever are just waiting for the right moment to come home.